Hi, I'm Carolyn Weaver from Body and Soul Companion. You are on week 24 of the spiritual exercises of Ignatius. And if you're following the liturgical year, you are on the first full week of Lent. And what we want to do is we saw Jesus calm the storm. We saw him deliver the demoniac. Now we're going to see him heal and resurrect. So the whole point, and these are three things in order in the events of life in the life of Christ. If you look at the 250 events, I could put a link to I have a blog called the Gospel Harmony Book Club where you read chronologically through the life of Christ. And this is event number 89. So 87, 88, 89, they're just right in a row. And they're all in the book of Matthew 5, or 4:35 through today. We'll be reading 5:21 through 43. And then tomorrow we'll switch over to Matthew. But today we are doing an imaginative contemplation. And imaginative contemplation, you've done a few with me if you've been following me. They're different. It's not Lectio Divina. It's not like what word or phrase shimmers for you, although something might shimmer for you. But this is to put yourself in the scene and imagine and look at the faces and all of that. So I did want to mention from yesterday, I didn't want to ruin your having that conversation at the end. I let you have that conversation. I let you turn off the video and have a conversation. And yesterday was about deliverance and who you are, what your real identity is, and I will put a link today to a book called Living Fearless by Jamie Winship. Yesterday I put a link in by two of my friends. Tom White, he wrote a book called The Believer's Guide to Spiritual Warfare. I proofread it when I was single in the 80s. I proofread the book for him. But this is Jamie Winship, who's also a friend. He wrote Living Fearless, and it's about your true identity. So I thought that was interesting that Jesus would say to the demoniac, "What is your name?" So, and also, I just want to tell you that I believe that people need deliverance. I can't reveal who it is, but just in July, I had someone who wasn't a follower of Jesus yet, and I have known this person since they were 18, and they're 25 years old now, so 5, 6, 7 years, and I had not seen her. She went through deliverance, like a literal deliverance, and her face was different the next time I saw her. Just a relief on her face. And just looking at the man yesterday, he was sitting there calmly and in his right mind. And deliverance changes people. So a first step would be Tom's book, I think, if you want to kind of explore that. Some people don't believe in that. I think it's in the scriptures. So, and Jesus has the authority to deliver us from demons and to heal us. So today it's about Jesus' healing, and he even has the power to resurrect. So I invite you to close your eyes and take a deep breath in and a deep exhale out. And keep doing that. With a longer exhale, just feel your body relax. And let your mind relax too. Coming into his presence, he is fixing his gaze on you and looking upon you with love. Receive his loving gaze. As we pray that more and more of our day today would be directed toward his service and praise out of that reception of his loving gaze. Lord, we pray to see you more clearly, love you more dearly, and follow you more nearly as we contemplate the healing of a woman and the raising of Jairus' daughter. Mark 5:21 through 43. And when Jesus had crossed over again in the boat to the other side, a great multitude gathered about him, and he stayed by the seashore. And one of the synagogue officials, named Jairus, came up, and upon seeing him, fell at his feet and entreated him earnestly, saying, "My little daughter is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live." And he went off with him, and a great multitude was following him and pressing in on him. And a woman who had a hemorrhage for 12 years, and had endured much at the hands of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was not helped at all, but rather had grown worse, after hearing about Jesus, came up in the crowd behind him, and touched his cloak. For she thought, "If I just touch his garments, I shall get well." And immediately the flow of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of her affliction. And immediately Jesus, perceiving in himself that the power proceeding from him had gone forth, turned around in the crowd and said, "Who touched my garments?" And his disciples said to him, "You see the multitude pressing in on you, and you say, 'Who touched me?'" And he looked around to see the woman who had done this. But the woman, fearing and trembling, aware of what had happened to her, came and fell down before him, and told him the whole truth. And he said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction." While he was still speaking, they came from the house of the synagogue official, saying, "Your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher any more?" But Jesus, overhearing what was being spoken, said to the synagogue official, "Do not be afraid any longer, only believe." And he allowed no one to follow him except Peter and James and John, the brother of James. And they came to the house of the synagogue official, and he beheld a commotion, and people loudly weeping and wailing. And entering in, he said to them, "Why make a commotion and weep? The child has not died, but is asleep." And they began laughing at him. But putting them all out, he took along the child's father and mother, and his own companions, and entered the room where the child was. And taking the child by the hand, he said to her, "Talitha cum," which translated means, "Little girl, I say to you, arise." And immediately the girl rose and began to walk, for she was 12 years old. And immediately they were completely astounded. And he gave them strict orders that no one should know about this. And he said that something should be given her to eat. Let's just sit with that reading for a bit. Now, see yourself in the scene. Maybe you're a disciple with Jesus. Maybe you're a person in the large crowd. You could even be Jairus, because he was with Jesus the whole time. Or maybe you're just a bug on the wall or a bug in the sky watching the whole scene. You can pick who you are in the sea. But I invite you to move to this scene by the lake. What does the lake look like? A lot of commotion. Just to give you background, he's come back from the eastern side of the Sea of Galilee, and he's coming back across again. And he's just delivered a mob out of the demoniac into 2,000 pigs. Big things. If you're a disciple, you've seen a lot today. So you come, and Jesus, you see him getting out of the boat. And just see what Jesus is wearing, because his cloak, his outer garment, is going to be significant in this scene. And just a reminder that they had a lighter garment underneath, and then they had an outer garment, and then they had a cloak over them usually. So what's the temperature? What are you wearing? Look at the massive crowd. Hear the murmurs. Hear what they're saying. What is it like? What does it feel like to be there among that crowd? And then see Jesus by the seashore. Picture him in your mind's eye. And then see one of the synagogue officials. Say to him, he might have been dressed a little bit more nicely than your average person, because he was a synagogue official. So see Jairus in your mind's eye. And then see him fall at Jesus' feet. And what's the expression on Jairus' face? Agonized Father. And hear him earnestly entreat Jesus, saying, my little daughter, who's 12 years old, is at the point of death. Please come and lay your hands on her, that she may get well and live. Watch Jesus as he listens. What's the expression on his face? See him respond. See Jairus stand up and walk, leading him, Jesus, toward where his daughter was. Then see the crowds crowding around Jesus, pressing against him. What would that have felt like? Maybe you're in a crowd and you can feel the press, hear the murmur of the crowd, and then see the woman. Maybe you are the woman. She had been hemorrhaging for 12 years. What does she look like as a woman who's hemorrhaged for 12 years? Look at her pale face. Does she look tired because she's endured so many physicians? She'd spent all that she had, so maybe what she's wearing is very poor. Maybe maybe she stooped over from all the hemorrhaging. But she'd heard about Jesus and his healing power. See her extend her hand and touch his cloak, his outer garment. Because in her mind, she's thinking, if I just touched his garments, I shall get well. And then see her face as immediately the flow of blood dries up. And she feels the healing course through her whole body. What is the expression on her face now? Maybe see her face, maybe color returns to her face. And then see Jesus stop. He's perceived that the power has proceeded from him. See him turn around toward the crowd. Jairus is still probably standing there with him, his disciples around him, the crowd still pressing in, and see him turn around and hear him ask, who touched my garments? And then hear his disciples say, you see the multitude pressing in on you, and you say, who touched me? Look at the expression on their face. Curious, a little disturbed, maybe? And see Jesus look around to see the woman who had done this. He knew that he had been touched. Even though the crowd was pressing in, he knew that power had left him. And see the look on the woman's face. It's fear and trembling. She's delighted also that she's been healed, but see the fear and trembling on her face. And then watch her fall down before him. And if you're him, or if you're her, feel the thud of your knees on the ground. And you tell him, I thought if I could only touch your garment, Jesus, I would be healed. And Jesus already knew her situation. And he said to her, hear her say, daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your affliction. Think about the crowd, because she was ritually impure, and her touching Jesus would have made him impure. So you, as even Jairus, as a synagogue official, what must he be thinking? What must the crowd be thinking? How bold of her to touch Jesus when that would have made him unclean too. What's the expression on Jesus' face as he says that? What's the expression on her? See her look up at Jesus' face. And while they were speaking, see people from the house of the synagogue official saying, with sadness, look at the sadness on their face, and see them turn to Jairus and say, your daughter has died. Why trouble the teacher anymore? Just come back, mourn her death. But Jesus turns from the woman who's at his feet, and he turns to the synagogue official and hear him say, "Do not be afraid any longer, only believe." And then he says to the crowd, look at him put his hand up at the crowd, "Stay here," and hear him call Peter, James, and John to come with him. So see, the four of them, Jesus, Peter, James, and John. What's the expression on Peter, James, and John's face? This daughter has died. What's Jesus going to do? And then look at Jesus' face. What's the look on his face? Resolution? And then look at Jairus. What would he be thinking? So I guess it was 5 people. And then see them step in and hear the loud weeping, even as they're coming toward the house. Hear the loud weeping and wailing. And Jesus saying, "Why make a commotion and weep? The child has not died, but is asleep." And then hear the roar of the laughter of people. And then hear Jesus say, "Get out, leave." And then see him take Jairus and his wife, Peter, James, and John, and see them go into the room, crowd into the room where the child was, and see him extend his hand and taking the hand of the child. See the hand of the child in the hand of Jesus, and hear him say, "Talitha cum," little girl, I say to you, arise. And see the girl pop up, the 12-year-old girl pop up. And see the astonishment on the faces of his companions and Jairus and his wife, and even the little girl. And then what's your reaction to see this girl pop up and walk around? And then see Jesus sternly and strictly tell them, looking at Jairus and his wife, "No one should know about this. No one." And then he said, "Get her something to eat." And then see Jesus turn to you and say, "What do you think of all this? And what do you need healing from?" Have a conversation with Jesus about that. Be blessed.